Hello and welcome back to 1874. It's Monday, so it's time for our podcast show, and I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by the elusive Jacob Tanswell, Aston Villa's athletic correspondent. So we're going to talk through a few things today. I'm going to catch up with Jacob on the squad cost rules. We're going to look at Villa's pre-season schedule. Of course, I can't have Jacob on and not ask him about transfers. If I'm being honest, it's probably the only reason anyone is watching, because all anyone wants to talk about is transfers. And I've also had some questions in off Twitter as well, so we'll fire some of them Jacob's way. This show is sponsored by Match Bingo as well. So if you head to 1874.io/matchbingo, you'll be able to check out their bingo cards, buy yourself a couple of bingo cards, and maybe win yourself a little bit of money on the World Club Cup and, of course, the Women's Euros as well. I'm on a good run on Match Bingo, won a couple of £100, so it's definitely worth investing a couple of quid to give yourself a chance of winning between £25 and £250. Now I've got that out the way, as I mentioned, the ever so elusive Jacob Tanswell. You have not seen him anywhere probably since the season finished. He's been in hiding. He's been enjoying life, still working hard on the Athletic. But Jacob, not working hard on podcasts. A little break for you.
A little break for me. I've only had 3 or 4 days holiday. It's not been anything huge. It's just been a lot of work, a lot of laying the groundwork really, because obviously when the season starts, you don't have much time to meet contacts and travel and do a lot of things like that. So I've just been doing that, been working on a few stories. Some have already come out already. Some will probably come out in January. I plan quite far ahead. So it's just going to be a good time to really just focus on writing and getting on with things. So people always ask, what do you do in the summer holidays? It's actually probably the busiest time for me in terms of the amount of pieces I produce, although you probably don't see as many at the moment. But it's been a good time. I think absence makes the heart grow fonder, doesn't it, Dan? Yes. And I think, that's certainly the case here.
I've missed you. I have missed speaking to you. We usually speak to each other 2-3 times a week, and we've had absolutely nothing at all. So we're coming into this podcast, in fact, having not really caught up about anything Villa related over the last few weeks. You did go to Glastonbury. You didn't mention that then. You did go to Glastonbury, didn't you? Did you have a good time?
I did. That was part of my 3 or 4 days off. Okay. I had a very nice time. Saw a few Villa shirts. And it was really enjoyable. I don't tend to obviously drink much, and I like to get up nice and early in the morning, where this was complete role reversal. Very tiring, and probably only a couple of days ago that I started to gather my sleep pattern back. But second time I've been, and it was wonderful.
Did you see Tyrone Mings?
I did not see Tyrone Mings, unfortunately. No. I was not authorised in the hospitality area, which
that makes sense.
Yeah, he was mainly lingering in.
Okay, brilliant. Right then, let's catch up then, Jacob. Let's start then with the UEFA squad cost rules. Villa, of course, have picked up a fine. I think I did a show on my own a couple of days ago, and I maybe butchered the explanation of what's happened. You're definitely more switched on and more financial than me, Jacob. Do you just want to explain to the listeners and the viewers what's happened there and how Villa are viewing the squad cost rule fine?
Yeah, essentially Villa, like we've known, it's been coming for a good while now, really. Villa, along with Chelsea, their squad cost ratio is above 80% in 2024. Of course, the way that UEFA have worked is they're trying to stagger it to help teams like Villa to bring the cost down. So 80% this year or last year, however you want to say it, then 70% next year. Instead of just that big hike down, they've tried to stagger it. Obviously Villa have fallen foul to that, and that's where they get the monetary sanction from. This has been a case that's been going on for a couple of years. I think ever since Villa qualified for the Conference League, they were not really in a position to follow those UEFA squad cost rules, because their wage bill is high, and that's how they were running the business. All of a sudden they're in Europe, and they've got to now not only comply with PSR Premier League, but also with UEFA SCR. So they've had to make a massive drop down while still trying to build a squad that can compete in the Champions League or Conference League or now Europa League. So it's been a very complicated time, and you've got to balance a lot of things, right? Because you want to bring the wage bill down, and that might mean selling a player. At the same time, you might have to replace that player, and how does it account on the books? In terms of, it might solve PSR, but it might not help really too much with the UEFA PSR. So you've got so many little things that you've got to worry about. And Villa have known this sanctions been coming for. It's not like a massive surprise to them. the case is now working towards that 70%, which is going to be in place this season.
You say that they kind of known it was coming and they're not massively worried about it. Question I had, and I've not seen this explained anywhere, and I don't know whether you know the answer is, obviously, Villa, the rules they're falling foul of are financial. So if you then get a fine, does that fine get factored into the financials and the rules? Because surely it's almost like giving someone who's on drugs or addicted to drugs, because surely the fine is, I've explained this terribly, but surely like a fine of financials isn't going to help you qualify for the rules, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything to do with that. It's just a simple instant hit into the pocket of you, really.
Right.
And of course, Wes Edens and Nasser Sararis have done fantastically in terms of what they do, in terms of backing up and shoring up and giving us as much money, easy for me to say, as possible. But these restrictions do prohibit them the extent they want to invest in Villa. No one's really seen it. That if you keep getting fines, at some point there's going to be a sporting sanction, isn't there?
Yeah.
Barcelona, Chelsea are happy to do it a lot. They're always falling foul of these. But at some point, maybe next year after that, they're going to say, we're going to stop whacking you 30 million or 15 million, or depending on how much you've broken the rules by. We're going to give you points deductions. And that's when probably Villa and Emry will really start to feel it.
Yeah, because you mentioned other teams that have been doing it year in, year out. I've got to say, this does very much feel like the kind of thing that Villa will be the ones that get a precedent gets set for. Villa will be the first ones to lose points. Villa will be the first ones to get a transfer ban off the back of this stuff. Like, it is a very real thing. And although we've kind of navigated these troubled waters in terms of SCR and PSR so far this summer, we'll talk about it in the transfer outgoings, but someone is still probably going to have to go. And the other thing is that the club are wary of stronger sanctions in the future.
Yeah, there has to be sanctions for any club. I'm not just saying for Villa. If it's just going to be a couple of million here or there, for clubs like Chelsea, they'll say, we can take the hit as long as we're improving on the pitch. At some point, there's going to be points deductions, right? You see Premier League clubs or general clubs get fined. Of course, they're not happy about it, but they can, they'll probably lick their wounds. As soon as a point deduction is discussed, you see it of Everton, Forest, these guys, Leicester maybe, now they're in the Championship, all of a sudden appeals go on, it takes to tribunals, etc. And that's when clubs really start to panic.
Yeah. Okay, then let's move on from that, because it's kind of old news now, even though it's only a week or so old. It's been done. We want to get you on for more current affairs. So Villa have now kind of announced their finished pre-season schedule. I've got a very handy tweet up on the screen from AVFC Stato. He's tweeted out Villa's fixture. So we've got Warsaw on July the 16th, Hansa Rostock on July the 19th, Frankfurt July 26th, St. Louis City on July the 30th, Nashville August the 2nd, AS Roma August the 6th, and the two new ones that have just been announced, Marseille on August the 9th and Villarreal on August the 10th, both away fixtures. So 2 games in 2 days, Jacob. I assume that will be 2 different teams, would be my thinking.
Yeah, you'd hope so. I don't think the sports scientists appreciate that, but it's a lot of games, and it's very demanding.
Yeah, it does feel a lot, doesn't it?
A couple of years ago, for the first pre-season I started covering Villa, like some people close to the team were like, the players are exhausted, and the players are exhausted, and they will be exhausted. It's like a boxing training camp where you're supposed to be tired at the end of the camp because you're supposed to get your body right, and then you have that week before the fight or before the first game of the Premier League season where you can just rest and then really go into it with physically at your peak. I think the way that Emry tries to design things is that he wants games to be experiments. He sees more value in games than behind closed doors or training. So he wants more games or more friendlies. It's as simple as that, really, in terms of if you can try things out against Marseille, tactically you might say, okay, we're going to continue a certain ploy or scheme on that day, then we'll play it. We'll train it against Villarreal. I think the more games is going to stand Villa in better stead, although it is going to be a hectic pre-season for the squad. A lot of travelling, a lot of games, and it's kind of going to be a baptism of fire coming straight back from the break.
Yeah, a lot of the players have well, not a lot, actually, it's a small sample of the players have returned to body more heat today. The likes of Boubacar Kamara, Jacob Ramsey, Tyrone Mings, Lamar Bogard, Ross Barkley, Joe Gauci. I saw, amongst others, other players will have returned as well. This is a good question from American Villain, actually. Is there any indication that Unai would change tactic/formation to fit the current squad if the right transfers don't materialise? So this can kind of lead us into players coming back for pre-season and then lead us into the transfer talk that everyone's waiting for.
Well, sorry to Or an answer, I simply don't know.
Okay.
I thought there was going to be some more tactical evolution than there was at the start of last year. They tried to a little bit in terms of two deeper midfielders and to split and to spread the back four in the build up, but then all of a sudden Pau Torres gets injured or Kamara's not back fit, and then Emry reverts to type. So I think it's going to be a matter of ask me a week before the start of the season, ask me if I've seen anything, ask me if everyone's fully fit, if there's any signings, if any outgoings, and then you'll probably be able to tell a bit better.
I mean, with that volume of pre-season friendlies, I think there was 8 pre-season friendlies there. You'd expect to get a good idea, because I always find pre-season interesting because there is little things that you can pick up. And the season before last pre-season, when Buendia got injured that summer, we did see Villa kind of operating in a different way, and Pau Torres was experimented with at left back and building up with 3 at the back, kind of the opposite of what Villa actually ended up doing that season. But that was because of the injury to Tyrone Mings, kind of knocked that on the head. So you can get little ideas of what the plans might be. They might also get ripped up because they don't work or because of injuries, but there'll definitely be something you can garner from 8 pre-season games, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can certainly garner from individual performances, right? You know, Ollie Watkins was away with England last year, and Duran obviously was away with Colombia. So Morgan Rogers played up front, didn't he, for a few games, and he was really good there. And all of a sudden, you thought, oh wow, this guy might actually play centrally. So you can always get a few clues. I think Villa have to evolve. I don't think they evolved enough last year, and that caught them up at the start of the season.
Yeah, I agree.
They have to be better. They can't just rely on eking out games, winning it by 1 goal margin, or relying on their quality. They've got to find a way to continue being defensively compact, like they showed signs of towards the end of last season, but be a bit more exciting at start. I think start of last season, Villa were pretty dull. They need to be more excited. They have to have a few more strings to their bow and revamp things, because I think teams are starting to know how Villa are going to look most games.
Yeah, because I've kind of gone with the width from the left back and coming on the left-hand side, and then the right winger normally, if they can, providing the width on the right-hand side. They've kind of done that for kind of a couple of years now, and usually you see Pep changes the way his fullbacks play. Pretty much every couple of seasons, he'll refresh things, he'll refresh his midfield. I think we maybe are coming up to the time where Villa kind of do go to change what it is that they've always done and done well under Emry in the main for the last 2 years.
Yeah, because if you watch football in the last 6 to 12 months, football's straying away now, which I think is a good thing, from the control. You're looking at teams that are more athletic, they're more transitional, going a bit more direct. You see the profusion of long throws into the box. We're starting to see certain themes and coming back round again, and I think Emry will adapt to that. He's not going to try and find the control and killing teams with possession. Of course, you can do that at certain times, but just going out to do that, like you saw at Crystal Palace at Wembley, it isn't going to always work, because these teams have realised what they have to do and how they have to set up defensively to counteract that. So I think Premier League is going to be more transitional, more fast-paced, more direct, which hopefully will be more entertaining. And Villa have to basically go along with that curve.
Yeah, so the boys are back, Jacob. Some of the players I mentioned have returned to Bodymoor Heath today. Any early words on things? What they'll be doing when the other players are going to return? What have you heard?
Yeah, the players that have been involved with their international teams will be back next week. Those that have been in today, you would assume that they'll go through their testing, body fat, get the skin calipers on them.
The calipers, they're horrible.
Yeah.
Oh my word, they are not nice.
Have you had them?
I went through a phase many years, 4 or 5 years ago now, where that was, I don't know, quite an old school personal trainer. And he used to measure with them, and let me tell you, they hurt.
They'll have that. They'll have.
Surely Villa don't have the calipers.
Surely
they'll do something.
No, I'm sure it's a modernised technique.
Gotta be.
They'll have something similar. They'll have jump tests.
Yeah.
They'll measure weight, height, those type of things, and then they'll obviously do the fitness test as well. The yo-yo test, the bleep test, those type of things as well. And then Emry, you'll see pictures of Emry probably at the end of the week with his whiteboard and getting to work.
Yeah, we've had a question actually around pre-season and fitness from Mac Argent, who says, who do you think will win the pre-season stats? Who is the fittest in the squad? Now, in my mind, there's only one answer to this, so I'm interested to hear what you say.
Only one answer?
Yeah, I think he wins it normally.
Luca Dean?
No.
Who?
Ollie Watkins.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
The bleep test, he wins the bleep test for me, I reckon.
You think?
Yeah, I'm surprised. Look at that. I'm not saying he's unfit at all. Obviously, all these players are fit. They're athletes. But Ollie Watkins felt the obvious one to me for the bleed test. And then Matty Cash was in my head for some reason as well.
I can't remember, but I was talking to someone the other day and I was telling about who came first in the speed test and who came first in the fitness test. And I can't remember. I might have wrote it down somewhere. But yeah, Watkins is proper professional. I only say Luca Dean because he's, spoken about similarly.
He looks like he's in the gym every day on pre-season before he goes back to pre-season as well. If you look at his Instagram, he's always working out.
Yeah, he sometimes sleeps at the training ground as well, right? So he's very obsessive, very good professional.
Yeah, I saw a video years and years ago. It would have been the second season, or no, I can't remember what season it would have been. But I remember seeing Ollie Watkins winning the bleep test and everyone applauding him on the video. So that was why it was the obvious answer to me. Right, there's not much else we can do on pre-season really until we see a bit more and hear a little bit more. So Jacob, it's that time. I have to ask you the thing that everyone probably tweets you about every single day, the thing I text you about every single day, transfers. Let's start with outgoings. What's the state of play according to Jacob Tanswell from The Athletic?
And when you text me, what do I usually reply?
Ask Ornstein. That's what you normally reply.
I don't tell you much.
No, you don't. No, you used to definitely tell me a lot more. You've slacked recently.
Yeah, I got to protect people, haven't I? But right now, like it's been like this for 2 months, and I wish they'd just clicked and skip a little bit because it's just like they're still waiting. You can't really say much. It's been very slow. I didn't expect them to do much before June 30 because of the deadline. Obviously, you don't want to count the accounting period, but now you expect them to start making moves. You saw that towards the end of last week. Definitely selling. The first route is selling the academy players, like we said. Kane Kessler-Hayden, great that he got his move so early. Louis Barry was going to go to Hull. Other teams are back in play now, and selling players. It's the important thing. And I've wrote it before, and I think someone mentioned on Twitter before we went live, in terms of Villa are being proactive, but at the same time, a large degree of their transfer is being reactive. You're waiting, for example, Villa want to sign a winger, right? They want to sign a winger to replace Leon Bailey. Leon Bailey's been away at the Gold Cup. He is on representatives, which is his father now. They're not really interested in do anything yet because Leon's on holiday. He wants a break, and then when he comes back, they'll discuss things. And if Leon's not going to go, then you probably can't get the winger in. Same with Emry Martinez. Same with a few other players in that situation. So you just kind of wait for the first domino to fall. And once the first domino's fallen, I think a lot more will happen. It's going to be a week, maybe this week, maybe next week, where I think you'll see a lot of news, a lot of speculation. Some of it will be right, some of it won't be. But right now, those players that are on the fringes, Nedeljkovic, Gauci, then Donker, you start to think, let's move them on. You've seen Villa did really well finally in getting Coutinho gone. Now it's going to be the others. And then I think you'll see some signings, maybe a centre-back, winger, right-back, that type of thing.
Yeah, I need to. Charisma, I'm definitely not saying that right, on Twitter. It says, are we in a sell first, buy after mode this summer? For example, we won't sign a striker unless Watkins goes, won't sign a number one unless Emry goes, no winger unless Bailey goes, as you've just said, no central midfielder unless Onana or Kamara goes. Feels like we are very reactive this summer, could leave us in a difficult situation. So you've basically just explained the answer to that question.
They're always reactive, though, aren't they? They were reactive last window.
Yeah, I get that, I get what you're saying. But surely at the moment, like there's certain things. Like I look at it as Villa are 2 men down from what they were last season because Rashford and Asensio aren't here right now. You could do Disassi as well actually. So essentially, 3 men down. Olsen backup goalkeeper as well, 4. They're 4 men down from where they were just to break even last season. So although we're saying they won't sign a striker unless a striker goes, same with goalkeeper, whatever, there must be certain positions where that isn't the case and, they have to make signings regardless.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's our friend UEFA score cost rules, right? So you've got to count that in and, someone just explained the rules and how Villa have got to do it. And this has not been explained very well by me, but most media, and I don't think a lot of people understand it, but what goes into what's being accounted on the spreadsheets and how you can, it's not so simple to say, we're going to sell Martinez and we're going to bring in Lucas Chevalier for 40 million. One, that's not what they want. They want far more than that. Secondly, how much of that they say I mean Martinez for 40 million. How much is actually going to be accounted for in the UEFA squad cost rules? Certainly not 40 million. So it's very difficult to do that. How you replace players, you probably look at left back and right back. I'm just giving you examples out of nowhere. Yeah. You look at Maatsen and Luca Dean. Their salaries are maybe double, treble what the right backs are on. How can you balance that back out? You sign a right back instead of a good right back, and then you sell the Luca Dean or Maatsen, one of those players, and then you even up a little bit, and then that hopefully should bring the costs down again. Could potentially as a sale, someone really high profile that although Villa might not want to sell, they can understand potentially he will go. These type of things you've got to consider. I think it's really important that Villa really bring this below 70% because, again, although you might get a monetary fine next year, you never know. It could be a sporting sanction. So it's important that the wage bill is taken down. And kind of, I'm boring myself talking about it because it's been this answer with anyone who's asked me. It's going to be reactive. Leon Bailey goes, Villa will then go for their winger and vice versa.
Yeah. Who at the moment, we still believe that Villa will probably have to sell a kind of big hitter. And Bailey's on big wage, but I wouldn't put him down as a big hitter. Would I put Luca Dean as a big hitter? I'm not sure. At the moment, you're looking at, I mean, I think Gyökeres going to Arsenal maybe moves the needle a bit with Watkins, and it sounds like Villa want Watkins to stay.
Watkins is happy. He's a professional. He's a big professional. I think he's happy here, and I think it'd be so difficult for Villa to sign a player that can score 15 goals minimum, league goals a season. I can see him staying. I think he's happy there. He's not going to kick up a fuss.
You say he's happy, but obviously there was things that happened at the kind of end of last season that will have frustrated him. But the overriding thing is that he's happy.
Time's a good healer, isn't it? And I'm sure discussions will took place over the summer. Of course, Manchester United have their interest in him as well. We've reported, so you never know. Never say never. But if Villa are going to sell Watkins, you're going to be sure that they'll have a striker lined up. And I don't right now can't see that happening. That it will leave.
Okay, so about Martinez, because I spoke to a contact a few weeks ago who said at the time 70-30, he's out the door, but then it seems to have gone quiet again. I did legislate that by saying that these things are very fluid and they do change. That was just the word at that moment. What do you think of Martinez right now?
Yeah, everyone keeps talking about Martinez, but Villa are just like, there's been no offer. So what are we supposed to do? As far as we're aware, he'll be back for pre-season and we'll carry on as normal. It's as much as he may deny it in the future if he stays at Villa. He was in tears because he felt at that specific moment after Tottenham that he was done at Villa. He thought it was time for a new chapter. Maybe he anticipated that a club like Atletico Madrid would come in for him and Oblak would have left sooner. Maybe anticipated that someone else would have come in. But right now, no one's made a bid. Man United obviously interested in him. They've been in talks with his representatives since January, but they've got Andre Onana. So they're probably waiting for someone to make them a bid for Onana, and it's just like this domino, especially for goalkeepers as well.
It's hard. Strikers are the same.
Goalkeepers and number nines are an absolute pain to either buy or move on. And everyone knows you want a goalkeeper, and everyone knows you want a striker. So let's say they sell Martinez, the guy they bring in, they're asking the club that's selling him was going to ask for huge money.
Okay, I'll move on to my next victim, Boubacar Kamara. So I actually said on a show maybe 3 or so weeks ago with Jonathan Johnson that that contract offer's obviously on the table and he obviously hasn't signed it at the moment. Boubacar Kamara, I think, has got good representatives. He's got good people around him that have his best interests at heart. I think you can see that by the way he made the Villa move initially on a free transfer. He's got 2 years left on his contract. I think if the move's not there at the moment, if you're a good advisor, I think you say to Kamara, don't sign that contract yet. Give it another year with Villa. Play out a year for Villa. You've then got a year left on your contract. There's every chance that then you could get a move. You'll have more options because you'll have a cheaper fee in a year's time. See if Villa get back into the Champions League. See where Villa are because you enjoy being here. And then if not, you could potentially just see out your contract again and get another big move on a free. And from what I know, Kamara's got a really good team around him. So to me, him going this summer doesn't make sense for him.
My personal opinion is if Villa got the Champions League, I think he would have signed a new contract by now. I think that was probably the player that had the biggest impact on that at Old Trafford, really, in terms of his future. There's a lot of clubs that are interested in him. Premier League clubs have loved him for a while, pre ACL. Saudi clubs are now obviously entering the market as well, which is never ideal if you don't want to sell a player, or especially if you're trying to negotiate a new contract, because his representatives, maybe rightly so, will look at the money that another club in Saudi are offering him, and they'll maybe use it as a bargaining chip for Villa to increase theirs. Like I say, he's got 2 years left on his contract. He loves Emry. He loves Villa. It won't be a case of he goes that he's going because he's really desperate to get out. I think he knows that he can. It's either money or playing the Champions League. That's a big carrot for him. So if there's a Champions League club that comes in and a club that offers big money for him, I think Villa will find it very difficult to stand his way. But he's had a lot of injuries, and the way that football's going is that medical teams have a huge say in signings, and they can veto a lot of deals. And I think that could be an issue if he did want to leave.
World Cup year as well, so you'd think try and get a whole season out yourself. If you do playing for Villa in the Europa League and Villa go well in the Europa League, you'll get yourself in that France team France squad, because you're such a good player, even with all their riches. I believe if it was a 23 to 26 man squad in France, if he was playing and he was fit, he'd get into that squad. So it's an important summer for Kamara. It's important he makes the right decision, which is why I just think everyone will just stand their ground and we'll review it again in a year's time. Final player I'm going to ask you about in terms of outgoings, Jacob, one of the players that returned today, Jacob Ramsey.
It's been a possibility for us to be sold for 2 years now. Newcastle were interested in him a couple of years ago. Tottenham are long-term admirers, and obviously with Tottenham now, they've got Rob McKenzie, Johan Langer, who they know Jacob Ramsey very well.
Yeah, Langer likes him, doesn't he?
Yeah, from the time at Villa. So there'll be one club, and I think he's a homegrown product, so pure bookable profit again helps. One thing you do mention that Villa have got to fulfil their homegrown quota, and he's not on a huge wage. He really, it's manageable, and something that I wrote probably a couple of weeks ago. I think if he doesn't leave then this summer, then I think there's a good chance that he signs a new contract and his wage meets a bit more of an even level as other players, like you saw with John Duran and Morgan Rogers signing their contracts at the back end of last year. So okay. I think he's a player as well that if Villa are going to sell one player, I think he'd probably be the one that they least mind, if that makes sense.
Like an acceptable loss. That's how I described it a month or so ago.
It's a good way to describe him. But Emery's always loved Jacob Ramsey, and he's not given up on him, has he? Even if his injury and his form hasn't quite matched the heights of 2 years ago.
Going to go to the questions now, Jacob, that have been asked. People have sent in on Twitter. Kate says, "What was the outcome of Villa's complaint to the PGMOL about the Rogers disallowed goal? Not heard a squeak out of it from either side."
You are never going to hear a squeak. I understand that there's been correspondence between Munchie, Howard Webb. They had a discussion, a letter. Both sides put their opinion forward, and they move on. And so they did have a response internally, but it was never published.
Okay, I did jump ahead slightly there. I didn't check with you whether there was anything else you wanted to say about transfers. You might have had something really big that you wanted to drop, and I just moved on. Or do you think we covered it in that segment?
I think we covered it in that segment.
Okay.
I just think you kind of need to move on the guys like Den Donker now, don't you? And Louis Barry.
Buendia,
yeah.
Chance Buendia comes back into it. If we didn't sign a number 10 and he's still here, chance he comes back in?
Well, if he starts well in the pre-season, then he'll be about. But I think his days are numbered now. I think Villa, for the way they want to be, like Emry did in January, if he can get an upgrade on Buendia, like he did with Asensio, they'll do that.
Okay. It's a question here from Steph. As a neutral, if Jacob I probably won't do all of these, Steph, I do apologise, because put quite a lot in there. As a neutral, if Jacob Tanswell could change something in each of the Villa Park exterior, Villa Park interior, Villa backroom staff, Aston Villa squad, Aston Villa fan base, what would you change? So we'll give you one change here, carte blanche to change one thing at Villa.
Okay, one thing?
Yeah, that kind of realm, that's the things that I've just mentioned.
Ticket prices. I would change the effectiveness or the allowed effectiveness of the Villa Fan Advisory Board. I would love them to have more power and more authority, and I think there's a lot of good people now, and they should be allowed to. In terms of Villa Park, I love it. I think it's my favourite stadium. Wouldn't change a thing. The squad, I would love them to sign a proper winger. I think it'd give them a completely different dimension. Sorry, I'm rattling through these. Is there another
That's
one
fine.
quickly?
I've gone past it now, so you've caught me out there. Backroom staff, probably wouldn't change anything there. You don't need to, do you?
I think they're going to make a few minor tweaks to some of the backroom staff, not the key players like McPhee and all those guys. They'll still be there, but some of the assistants to those guys that have moved on.
Austin McPhee is a funny one because I seem to, every time I do The Guardian, he seems to somehow end up coming up. Austin McPhee, I always end up talking. I talk about him a lot on here, obviously, and then I end up talking about him in other places as well.
Keith Andrews, the set piece coach of Brentford's got the main job, hasn't he? So,
well,
they're in vogue.
That leads us into a great question, and maybe Austin McPhee in the frame here, Jacob. If Emry resigned tomorrow, which one manager would you appoint to replace him? Linked to that is the lack of planning, lack of succession planning / reliance on one man a concern at all. For what it's worth, I don't think it's much of a concern. Just an interesting point of difference to most clubs now. That comes from Rational Villa perspective on Twitter. I've got my answer. What would the same as yours?
You're going to have
to McPhee.
You're going to have to replace the whole football department ever.
Yeah,
Andoni Iraola.
That's exactly who I was going to say. And then you might not have to replace the whole football department as well, because you might be able to speak to them in Spanish and get them to stay.
God, yeah. I just think let's hope it's not for a while yet, and let's hope it's happened when I'm not reporting on the club, because it's going to be busy. It's going to be frenetic. But yeah, if Emry leaves, I'll go for Iraola.
Okay. Regan McMahon has asked, as a Villa fan, I'm beginning to worry about the rise of Birmingham down the road. They seem confident about returning to the football elite. Is it a return to the elite, or maybe entering the elite for the first time? Not sure. Are you concerned about their trajectory, or is it wishful thinking? Now, interestingly, Jacob, you won't know this. I'm actually doing a show on this in the next couple of weeks with Greg, where we're actually going to investigate this and do this properly, because I know Greg's got good intel about the mob down in the road. So we're going to do that show. But from your point of view, nothing to worry about right now because they're a league below Villa.
Yeah, league below. I think you'll find it difficult to get out of the Championship. Of course, you sign a lot of good players, and you're optimistic to start the pre-season. Very glitzy. I think they've signed 4 or 5 good players.
Actually, made a couple of good signings in fairness.
Damari Gray, yeah, but let's see how they are during November and during the Tuesday or Wednesday, Saturday slog, and let's see how they adapt them.
Okay. I think that's everything, apart from there was a question, a funny one to it, not really funny one, but Peter Hennessy says, how often do you get your hair cut?
Not as often as you. Do you know, over the summer, maybe one of the reasons I did appear on this podcast is over the summer I actually grew it. Because I could
see it's long on top. This is one of the reasons I wanted to put this question in, because I can see a new look on top, and I couldn't work out whether you'd had the haircut on the side or not, but I could see it on top.
I did have time to cut it, but yeah, I'm trying to make the most. I don't think I've got many haircuts left, so I'm just trying to make the most of it while I've got it.
What do you mean? Your hair's not going anywhere, is it?
The stress is it? The hairline's going. Okay. Hairline's desperately trying to save. I think a couple of years' time, I think I might have to have a trip to Turkey, and I'm warning you now. So
exclusive.
When it does happen, no one laughs, because it's been in the planning for a good while.
Really? I think this is bizarre, Jacob.
It's covered very well.
I think I'm doing okay for a man of my age who's 40 in a few months. My issue is the colouring of the hair.
I'm having that as well. I've got a few greys as well now. So, and I'm 24. So you've done very well. I
forget how young you are, because you're so. And he said, because you're so serious. That wasn't what I meant. because you're so professional. I always think people who are more professional than me are a lot older than they are, but then I realise everyone in the world is probably more professional than me.
No, I also. I think I haven't been back to Birmingham for about a week or so, but I should actually have Greg Evans's book by the time.
Someone asked. That was another question. He kept jogging my memory of the question. Greg said he sent me this book, and I've not received it yet, by the way, unless the dogs had it in the post. But it says, does Jacob have any aspirations of writing a book about Villa, a la Evans and Mayer? Great use of a la.
Yeah, like I say, I'm relatively young, and I think once I get to their level, I'd like to write a book. I just don't think I've got the expertise and skill set to write as informed book over that many pages. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a really good book. I think it's going to be the best Villa book out. May I add?
I'm looking forward to it
for a few reasons. But I would like to write a book. I don't know if it's going to be about Villa. I don't know how long I'll be at Villa for to write a book about it, but. Yeah, I'd love to write a book at some point. That'd be great, and I'm sure this one is as well.
Yeah, I can't wait to read it. I can't. Greg, get onto your publisher if you are listening. I still haven't received mine.
When's it? Is it out now?
Out. People have got it. Max has been reading it. Max Stokes, Villa on Tour, and he says it's absolutely unreal.
Is it really? Wow, big.
Yeah, so I might as well flash the QR code up at this
flash it
point
up.
for it if people order it. There we go. Waking the Giant, Greg Evans even, and Matt Mayer. Definitely going to be worth a read. I did have a little squeeze through Max's copy because he brought it round to my house with him, and he does sort of some juicy stuff in there. And Greg teased it very well on here a few weeks ago as well. Yeah, it's going to be. It's like you say. I think it's going to be an incredible Villa book. I'm hoping I get it in time for my holiday because I'd like to read it.
The reason I like to read it is because I think it will paint an honest picture of the club. I think it will show its wrinkles from the last 10 years, maybe further back as well, from guys that know the club intrinsically, like Greg and Matt, who is just a brilliant journalist and brilliant guy. And then it brings you up to this era as well. So I think for me, I look forward to reading about it and hearing about the stories on when Villa were on their knees and how they've rose up.
I mean, I wonder if it mentions you taking over as Aston Villa correspondent, because that's when the rise has really happened for the club.
I hope not.
Maybe you could follow on. You could do that. You could do the follow up book.
What would it be called? If it's keeping the giant awake? I don't know.
I don't know. But I'd have to have something to do with PSR and SCR in there, wouldn't it? Because all we ever talk about, it'd have to be the name.
Honestly, I think you guys should invite our football finance expert on, Chris Weatherspoon.
Let's get him on.
Bring him on, because this guy, we've employed a guy especially to concentrate on PSR, and it just shows you the climate of football, but it shows you that these guys, that's what they do every day. That's their speciality, and they're brilliant at it. So yeah, bring him on. I think he's far more qualified than anyone else to talk about it.
We'd still need a middleman. We'd still need you. Me doing it on my own. It doesn't work. We'd still need a middleman in there as well. I'm for like the people who are under 12 to understand. That's my line of questioning. And then you're the 18 to 24 bracket.
I'm the 16,
the professional Chris above that. Let's get him on. Let's make that happen. Let's have that conversation. Although I'm sure nobody wants a PSR specific podcast because everyone's fed up of it, including me.
I'm not going to write. I think I've got one more thing to do this week on PSR or revenue things, and then after that I'm going to concentrate on football and other things not to do with PSR.
That would be nice, wouldn't it? Right then, Jacob, that's 37 minutes of Villa chat. I've really enjoyed having you back on. I've missed you. You can't just be around for 11 months of the year, 2-3 times a week, and then just disappear for a month. It's not odd, but it's been good to have you back, and I'm sure everyone's enjoyed listening to you again as well.
I hope so, and yeah, I've really enjoyed some time away, just working quietly. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it's the third season now. Villa. It's gone very quickly.
Yes, fast.
Yeah, love it. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, okay. And thank you to Match Bingo for sponsoring us as well. Do check out 1874.io/Match Bingo for everything they do and get yourself some bingo cards and help support the channel. Right then, if you have watched this via YouTube, do the usual stuff. If you could give the video a like, leave us a comment and subscribe with your post notifications. On subscriber numbers are hitting all-time highs at the moment, going up every single week. So that's great to see. Spotify, Apple Podcast listeners, if you could leave a comment or a review and give us 5 stars, that would be much appreciated as well. And keep your eye on our social media because there's content coming out all the time. We're pretty much daily now. So yeah, keep your eye on our social media channels and you'll know when our content has come out. And Jacob, can we maybe see you again this week? Not sure, too busy. Maybe towards the end of the week, maybe a Friday show?
Potentially, I've got. Okay. I'm in Slamton, London, and back in Birmingham. I'm currently moving, trying to move house, so very busy time.
Right.
Yeah. So
okay.
Lots going
we'll see
on.
If he can,
I'll try.
We'll see if he can spare us 37 minutes of his time later on in the week. But thank you again for coming on. Right, that does us. Only one thing left to say: up the Villa.